All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Great Mondays Radio. Today, I have as my guest Brett Martin, who is the co-founder of a very cool startup called Kumospace, as well as a co-founder of Charge Ventures. Brett, I appreciate you coming and chatting with me. Culture is something that we talk a lot about, but you're getting into solving a problem that I've seen emerge pretty quickly, and I think is part of this, which is remote work. First of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then what are you trying to do to solve this problem of culture well distributed?
Josh, I appreciate you too. So thank you for having me. And Kumospace, we sell basically virtual offices where remote and distributed teams show up for work every day. And we are trying to. It's funny, Andy Jassy, who's the new CEO of Amazon, he wrote a memo, explaining why he was bringing everyone back into the office, I think, May 1st, 2023. And, he says, well, we need this because we need to tutor and mentor the next generation. We need to be able to onboard, new talent. We need to be able to, have collaborate and come up with new ideas. And, we also need to build, relationships with our coworkers and that will help us be more effective, have higher levels of trust. And I agree with literally everything he said. I just disagree that you need to go physically back to an office to do that. And I think that we can use software to, enable those types of trustful interactions.
Spoiler alert, I completely agree. I was in a room full of CHROs last week, and it was everybody's battling this and trying to figure this out, because that's exactly right. Why, I guess, is the question. Why are we coming back to work? Why are people demanding people show up? And those are some of the things that they came up with. They're like, well, I need to mentor. I need to make sure this. So when we think about that, would you say that those are the primary challenges that we now need to solve for? We did know how to do that together, right? We sat on the same floor, we could walk up, and now we need to figure out how to do that in a whole different way. The mentoring, the connections, the culture, the innovation, right? That's a big one, is innovation. So is that what we're trying? Would you say those are the big problems that are showing up as we transition to remote?
Yeah, I was just speaking with Professor Ravi Gahedran. He's down in Florida, and he was saying, well, actually, this isn't a new problem. Microsoft literally did research on this 20 years ago on remote organizations, and they said, well, actually, you lose cross-silo connectivity. People don't form bonds. It's harder to get people up to speed on cultural, what the company culture is. So these are not actually new problems for folks that have been, had distributed teams, offshore teams. These are not new problems, actually.
Yeah.
It's new because all of a sudden everyone during the pandemic was forced to confront them. And so instead of actually understanding the problem and fixing it and keeping some of the benefits we got during the pandemic and remote work, everyone just wants to kind of retreat to what they know. And
what they know, exactly.
It wasn't even intentional. It just happens to be that the physical parameters of putting everyone in a box over the course of the day, and then needing to get water and needing to get lunch, creates this sort of connectivity and iterative engagement across silos, and it helps people build relationships. And the problem is that we didn't think about, okay, now that we don't get this for free because we don't have a physical box that we put everyone in every day, how do we create that? How do we solve that remotely? And I think actually, your audience, all these CHROs and chief people officers, have been given this impossible task where they say, okay, you're in charge of figuring out culture.
Impossible.
And
impossible.
Yeah. And you get to have one happy hour a month to do that. It's good luck, right?
Right.
And when in reality, culture is obviously this like organizational wide problem that no one person or department is going to be able to solve.
Right.
And you need to, actually undergo sort of organizational transformation about the way that we do remote work if we actually want to build culture while working remotely.
There was a study. I need to go back and look at it because it's been a while. I don't remember. I can't quite cite the study exactly, but the findings were that if you were on a different floor, even in the same building, you might as well be like across the world. Like no one's gonna, rarely are they climbing the stairs or getting in the elevator. So your point about this is not a new problem resonates with me. And one of the sort of the way that I describe that, which is you're like, accidentally, we happen to have to get up and go to the bathroom. We happen to have to get some coffee, right? It's like we are now trading that square footage, and that square footage that caused that to happen before is no longer there. So we have to invest in something else. And so when folks are saying, hey, we're going to save so much money, when leaders are saying we're going to save so much money on not having offices, I would say that, okay, great, maybe you do, right? Real estate is really expensive, but you can't just assume that's all going to be pure profit, because you have to invest it in the things that office was doing for you. And I think that's where we kind of live. And so you created a platform that creates a virtual office. And how does that, I mean, it looks like a game, right? It looks like a sort of a sim game.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, every time I tell people we build virtual offices, they say, is that VR? And,
Right.
people's immediate head go there, and it's like, well, there's only a few million headsets in the world, and maybe far less than that
Yeah.
people using them. And so we wanted to build a tool that could actually be used by millions of people all over across the world. So no, actually it's, we're just a two-dimensional, video chat, but basically we let you have multiple conversations in the same place at the same time. So in Kumospace, your avatar is your video. We're not, super cartoony and, trying to help you build and be an anonymous avatar. I mean, there's places for that and all, metaverse products, but in reality, we're targeting the work audience. So, you are your video. And really the only difference is that you can actually look in your office and see who is there and who is chatting and who is having conversations and move freely between them. So if you were to go to our Kumospace office, at 9 a.m., you would see 20, 25, 30 people kind of file in over the course of the hour. We're mostly engineers and designers, so it doesn't really start right at 9. And then, they would come and, you'd see people screen sharing. You could see the marketing department have a meeting. You could tap on the door and say, hey, just want to let you know we're going to get this new release out. And you could fluidly move from there to the engineering meeting. And, yes, maybe you see the meetings that are happening on your calendar, right? But what would happen if you just showed up at some Zoom meeting that you were not invited to and your team saw you in the waiting room? They would be like, that's super weird. What do what do you want, Josh?
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in Kumospace, it's totally natural, the same way it would be in a physical office.
So one of the things that I think is interesting about this provides, this kind of tool, is what I would call situational awareness. And it's that, to me, is the kind of context and information that you don't get from our kind of traditional linear tools. So you're actually getting information, multiple complex pieces of information that helps you understand who's doing what. And I find that, I think some people would say, well, I don't really necessarily care. Marketing department doesn't matter to me. I'm just doing my thing. But to me, it feels like you have the ability to tap into that information and understand what's happening in the organization. I feel like that's a big piece of what's been missing. It's almost like busyness, right? Like when you go to the office and you feel like you're like, cool, there's things happening. I mean, I'm an extrovert. I get juiced from that. But that, to me, is what one of the interesting things about Kumospace is this situational awareness. Do you have do some of your clients like, have you heard about, like, is that something that they value, that they see, that they've called out, or is this just like a nerdy Josh thing that's like I'm seeing?
Oh no, this is everyone that uses Kumospace. I mean, first off, the thing you're talking about is the hum of happy office, right? The vibe of oh, this is an exciting place, things are getting done here, people are doing good work, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be surrounded by other motivated people, working toward a common goal, right? And when you're sitting in your home, but in your studio apartment in New York by yourself, and you just graduated from a good school, but your new job is sitting in a small apartment, you're not getting that, right? You're not getting that vibe. You're not seeing other people strive for greatness and inspired to do the same, right? So that's the problem. And I think what you mentioned was this sort of, fundamentally, it's like a network effect, right? If you think about any product with network effects, right? Zoom, has network effects, right? But not at the organizational level, right? Because everyone, you could have 1,000-person organization, everyone's sitting in Zoom meetings all day, but no one has it doesn't get better the more people who are having Zoom from meetings, right? It's easier to start your own meeting, but it doesn't get better if you have 10 other organizations using other teams in your company using Zoom at the same time. In fact, you have no idea what they're doing. Whereas Kumospace actually gets better the more people you bring onto it. So if you get, just your team, that's one thing. If you get every other team, it actually becomes that much better, because now every other team is aware of what every other team is doing. They all have the context, and they can fluidly move between each other, learn about each other, and connect with each other, and do a better job holistically. So really, it's just networked video chat. I mean, it's honestly not much more complicated than that, but the output is gestalt. It is greater than the sum of the parts.
And are you able to, well, let me ask it as a more open question. When you are talking to the kind of customer that you want, but maybe they're more of that older school, right? Of like, we just need to get people back in the office. What lights them up? What are the benefits that they go, oh, I get it? Like, do you tell that story and they go, totally, sign me up? Or is there another attribute or feature that you've seen, some of these folks just go, aha, I get it? Like, what's the I get it moment from some of those older school, is the best way I can put it, thinkers?
Seeing is believing. I mean, this is something new and novel, and people haven't experienced it before, so it can be hard to conceptualize. And when saying like, it literally is just like the closest thing is like an office, right? Like, I think people come in and their face lights up, and then they bump into someone for the first time, and they walk into a meeting, or we have an all hands meeting, and it's really amazing. Every time it's so kind of exciting me is that we hit 4 o'clock, and everyone kind of starts trickling out of their offices and their meetings, and they come into our auditorium in our office and pile in, and then we have that 20 minutes, and then afterward everyone breaks off into small groups and kind of continues chatting with each other and conversing about what they just saw and what they need to do next after a meeting. And seeing that is believing, because you're like, oh yeah, I remember this from the physical world, and now I'm seeing it. And so I think that's the magic. I think really the way I describe it is, people come for the culture, they buy for the visibility, and they stay for the collaboration. And what I mean by that is, people come for the culture. It's, they know they have a culture problem. They know, it's oftentimes CHROs or chief people officer, or, in a bigger organization, a remote work specialist or employee engagement specialist, right? They're like, they've been tasked with this impossible task, right? So they come for the culture. Maybe they thought that they needed a virtual event and they were going to do a happy hour, but we sort of, say, hey, look, like, culture wasn't built with a once a month happy hour. It's a repeated, dozen micro interactions a day across every person at your organization, right? You buy because bosses buy Kumospace because they say, you know what? I want to know what my team is doing. I want to be able to, and it's not just like a FaceTime thing. It's not just a lack of trust thing. It's like, if I can see what my team is doing, I can help them more. I can mentor them. I can, everyone talks about best practices, is manage on outputs, manage on outputs. Well, guess what? If you manage on outputs and you don't know the output for a month, then it's going to take a month to improve your
Right,
outputs
right,
at
right, right,
bare
right.
minimum, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you see that the inputs going into the process on day 2 of a month-long project aren't what you know aren't going to work, you can actually intervene and
correct.
make a
Yeah,
course correction and
yeah.
improve things faster, right? And that's what people don't realize about remote work. It's like, actually it helps to sit side by side with someone and help them. And then the final part is, to that point, is like, I think I see a lot of people making this argument that, we can do collaboration remote, asynchronously, and they think collaboration is I write a document and you comment on it. And we think that's bullshit. We think that collaboration is actually this magic that happens when we synchronously have a conversation and a dialogue, and we go back and forth, and then the output of that dialogue is actually something completely different than either of us would have come up with on our own. And so we converge to a shared understanding that might have been something different than either of us came to the table with. And you need synchronicity to do that. And so for all these people that are saying we don't need any of this anymore, well, good luck coming up with new ideas, to your original
Right,
point.
exactly. I think we're going to see a drop off and a steep drop off in innovation for those companies that aren't able to pick that up. So let's zoom out. You've been you funded or founder of a lot of different startups. What would you say is your learning? What advice might you give to folks that are in that growth phase of starting to hire and scale? When you think about culture, do you have any stories around like something that like really worked or something that totally didn't work? Because we can learn from that as well.
I think about, when I think about culture, my good friend Maya Hosebakavili, she was chief people officer at Stripe for a
Love
long
her.
time, and then
Love her. I love her work.
Maya, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Maya's an amazing, good friend of mine. We went to college together. Then she actually ran their M&A and investing arm after being chief people officer, which is probably one of the craziest sort of corporate transitions. It just gives you an idea of the caliber of person.
Yeah.
And I actually like, one thing that I think is useful to get people in person for is actually, if you're doing team building, right? Like taking advantage of that opportunity to be physical. One thing I love doing, I love, you have trust falls, and like there's value in that. People make fun of it, but I like just like to line my team up and do some eye gazing, and it's really interesting to watch people like connect on that level. So one thing I would just say is, like, we talked a lot about remote work, but if you are going to get people in person, whether it's hybrid or in an offsite, be creative about using that physical space and that physical connection, and like usually connect people emotionally, and use physicality to do that. So maybe a little bit counterintuitive to this conversation, but I love to get people out and shake them up from their office life.
I think that's wonderful, and I think it's genuine, right? You are so invested in the remote digital world, but you're like, actually, there is some value. And I just heard from the chief people officer at Atlassian, right? And they create software for teamwork and remote work, and they're trying to go remote. And she said that they have decided that the reason they get together, the primary reason, is connection. And the secondary reason is solving complex problems, which is what I think you're talking about with collaboration. So to me, my advice to some of my clients and anybody else who will listen is always about, hey, it is useful to come together, but let's be thoughtful about it. Like, make an investment, bring people together, whether it's that kind of buffer style, right? Come together once a year, bring everybody together and have an offsite for a week. Or if it's that Airbnb, like once a quarter, your team's coming together in person. Those feel like irreplaceable things. Not that you couldn't help, obviously we're both aligned on it's possible to have comprehensive, evolving, educationally filled remote work life. But there is that offline experience of breathing the same air that really can't be replaced. Is there anything else as we wrap up? Is there anything else that you think would be really important for our audience of professionals, culture builders, formal and informal culture builders, to know either about what you have learned or the work that you're doing? What would you like to share?
Yeah, I always hated, I've never run, even, before I ran a remote company, I never worked out of a WeWork because I never thought that you could build something unique in such a commodified place. And I think that, I feel the same way about, building a remote company. It's like, if you work on these platforms, Slack and Zoom, where everyone, it's like the purpose of it is to commodify the other, the people going into it. Everyone looks the same and is the same shape. And, there's no place for self-expression at the individual or company level, right? Like I just like, hey, how do you find opportunities to create and celebrate the like individuals that are building your organization? And I would just encourage you to look for tools that provide some of that space for uniqueness and differentiation and self-expression. And if you're interested in checking out Kumospace, be happy to connect with anyone from Josh's podcast. Just reference it in the subject line, and just shoot me an email, brett@kumospace.com.
Awesome. Brett Martin, thank you. Co-founder of Charge Ventures and Kumospace. You can find him at kumospace.com, KUMOSPACE. Brett Martin, thanks for coming on Great Mondays Radio. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom.
Pleasure being here, Josh. It's always fun, and look forward to bumping into you at the next South by.